is the Leon Charney Report. And now, here is your host, Leon Charney.
Welcome to another Leon Charney Report. What a big week this is and was. We're taping on a Thursday. I predict that my friend Bill Clinton will be exonerated, acquitted, call it whatever you want. We've been saying it for 1 year now that constitutionally this is the man that will stay in office, and I believe that that vote is in. Very surprised by Arlen Specter's vote yesterday. A Scottish vote, he called it. That means unless you prove that you're guilty or innocent, you lay down the gloves and you say, forget about it. An important issue to me personally was the fact that constitutionally I didn't think they had a case, and that there was a right wing in this country that was very dangerously trying to proceed against the will of the people. I'm not talking about whether Clinton did bad things or good things. Obviously what he did in the office was reprehensible. You've heard that word 1,000 times. But when people defy the public opinion in this country, we're in rough shape. And then we're not a democracy. So we brought on Raghida Dergham, who is a commentator at CNN now, and also the senior correspondent, political correspondent, diplomatic correspondent for Hayat, a longtime member of the panel of the show, who is going to tell us about the Middle East. And they don't have such great democracies over there. They have a semblance of democracy. And Raghida was the commentator for King Hussein's funeral on this past Monday. And she's got a lot to say about what's happening there. Raghida, first of all, am I pronouncing your name? I'm very nervous with your name. You should change it to Ruth so we could get along with maybe Stern, Ruth Stern or something.
Ruth. Could call me Ra.
How long? You were on CNN for how long with that funeral?
Well, it went on from 4 in the morning till 9, so it was a very lengthy process. However, what a dignified funeral it was. It was impressive because the Jordanians showed that, in fact, they are strong institutionally in terms of their security institutions and institutions of the protocol. There was not one problem. It was so impressive to have about, 40 heads of states and governments and kings and princes.
39 and a half. Yeltsin tipped in and he tipped out.
What didn't you appreciate it? The fact that he walked in, that he went there, that he was there even for 15 minutes, despite his doctor's advice. I thought it was something to be recognized, and in a very special way.
But why did he do it?
Because I think the man wanted to be at such an occasion. I think he felt
there was a political
wanted
motive?
to. I didn't see any because he didn't stay long. Others may have had political motives aside and above from the fact that they wanted to pay respects to the late King Hussein. But in Yeltsin's case, I didn't think so.
Really?
Well, why? Why would you see political motives?
I think that Yeltsin wanted to prove to his country that he's alive.
He could have done that from Moscow. He didn't have to fly to Amman.
He has a hard time doing that in Moscow. They think there's an image of him that they paste up and they make pictures of him. They think there's a number 2 double. And I think he had to show that. He may have been very impressed with Primakov, the Prime Minister.
Yes, I know
is
better.
A big Middle East expert.
Yes, I know him for many, many years.
I'm sure, so do I. And he's a former KGB guy. We're going to bring on Shmuel Segev later, who wrote Crossing the Jordan. He claims he worked for the Ma'arif for 30 years. I think he worked for the Mossad. And then we're bringing on Shmuel Sisso, who's the Consul General of Israel, is going to talk and praise, I'm sure, I haven't talked to him yet, Jordan. I remember in this studio, about before the peace treaty, we had the Jordanian ambassador on this show, and it was like a big favor, he didn't cross the lines, he didn't cross the borders, there will never be peace, we hate the Arabs, we hate the Jews, we hate. About 4.5 hours later, there's a peace treaty. Well, I made a mistake. I meant we love. Basically, that's what went on in the Middle East. The Israeli delegation was immense.
Yes. But did you notice at the funeral, I take it that's what you mean, the delegation.
Right.
Did you notice that they went in 4 different teams, if you will, to pay respects before the casket? Every delegation went in one, whether it was the American delegation or the
Israelis broke up before, there's an election going on.
Well, they went into 4 different delegations. And in effect, you could see, I'm sure I want to repeat that each and every one went to pay respects for the late king first. But you could see, for example, when Mr. Netanyahu stood there with Ariel Sharon, it was almost like this is a photo op They stood there for a lengthier time than the others, and then it was noticeable that the other Israeli officials or dignitaries went separately. So what do you make out of that?
There's a political fight going on, and President Weizmann was alone also. He just did his military thing, and then got into a big sort of a bag of trouble in Israel because he shook the hand of a former Arab terrorist or from Syria. And in Israel, that's a big, big item.
Also, did you notice that the head of the Mossad was there?
Well,
and
Halevi,
that it was,
he's a very,
and it was
very-
announced. I mean, that's rather interesting
Right,
that
but
it was announced
he was
that.
a very close friend of Hussein, and I think you'll see it in Shmuel Segev's book. He was used a lot by Yitzhak Rabin in order to bring that peace treaty close together. So he really had a deep relationship with, I think, they brought him back after that Mashal problem, and I think he was an ambassador in Brussels or something like that. So
But
he's
still,
a
the
friend.
fact
it was
that
great. It was a great sight.
But the fact that it is announced in an Arab capital that the head of the Mossad would be there,
That's a big thing.
that is a big thing. I
You're
think that's number one. The fact that the Jordanians did not try to hide it, they didn't say, oh, let him be there, but silently. That's
They announced his name, and I
yes,
didn't know that.
when it was on the wires,
Really?
so that it was part of the delegation.
Wow.
But still, to me, the biggest political surprise at the funeral
Assad.
was Hafid al-Assad of Syria, the president of
You're
Syria.
an expert. Why did he come?
I believe, first of all, again, I want to say, I believe that he did go to pay respects to the late King Hussein, definitely. But then I think, on a political level, he decided to say to the new Jordanian king that let us really turn the page. Let us see that we can start new. And I believe that he understood that should he have not showed up, it would have been very bad for him. Because imagine to say the excuse that I can't be there because the Israeli delegation is there, where in fact he is, Syria is negotiating with Israel on the peace within the peace process. So to have been absent from the funeral would have been very costly for President Assad of Syria. But I think politically, he wanted to put across a message to the Jordanians and to the Israelis and to the United States, to the Americans, because of course he met with President Clinton. And I would assume that one of the messages is that, look, psychologically, it's also different for me. I am not any longer someone who is obsessed by not appearing at the funeral because the Israelis are there. It was significant
It was a move. It was a big
in a
move.
political sense towards
agree.
the United States, towards Israel, towards the Jordanians. And I believe that he was sincere in expressing his condolences.
I agree. And the Israelis were not able to allow Arafat to go to Yitzhak Rabin's funeral
Right.
because of security. They were afraid to bring him in. And so what happened later on is he paid a shiva call, which is a respect call to Leah Rabin, but they wouldn't bring him in. Something
But
happened.
isn't that's a
It's
very, very interesting point you're making, whereas at the funeral of King Hussein, there were no such red lines. It's interesting.
It is.
Particularly because this is an Arab capital and it is royalty. It's not a matter of. There was many people from the region, from the Arab world, who would have had difficulty.
I spoke to a lot of people in Israel after King Hussein died, and Shmuel Sisso, the Consul General, I'm sure will confirm. I've never seen such an outpouring of love towards a foreign personality, especially an Arab personality, as I've seen. They are doing a special medal for King Hussein now. People in the streets thought they lost their best friend. I mean, it's amazing, the transformation that took place.
Yes.
So maybe that's a good omen for the Middle East.
Yeah, he also was very sensitive on the level of people to the
He
very
visited
emotions.
the families when that
Exactly.
the Jordanian soldier gunned down some children in a terrible assassination. He came to visit the parents, and I think
Yes.
one of the parents had a baby. I read the newspaper, and she named him something about King Hussein. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. So he had that human touch. He made a lot of errors, and what's his name, Shmuel Segev, will tell you that he made a lot of errors. 1967 war, Asa Weizmann told him, stay out of it. He stepped in. He lost the West Bank. He lost Jerusalem. He went to the Gulf War, but yet he overcame everything.
But this is history. History allows itself to be interpreted differently, it seems to me, because what might be an error in your point of view might not be in the Jordanians' point of view. For example, the Gulf War, the position that King Hussein took, which angered the United States, which angered the governments and the royal families in the Gulf states, and was costly for King Hussein. I believe that he really had to take that position because I think it was for the stability of Jordan. He understood and read the street in Jordan very well, and he understood that this is what he had to do. So he was not saying that, yes, he approved of the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. He was not saying that. He was saying, let us really exhaust the diplomatic solution before we go to the military solution. So I mean, I respect a differing point of view, but I don't see it as a mistake.
I would think that King Hussein, if he were alive, would agree that 67 was a wrong move for him. The Gulf War he overcame because it was an economic necessity. But in 67, that transformed the whole Middle East. And look, Black September. Yes, Arafat was at the funeral. I mean, you can get nuts studying the Middle East.
Absolutely.
That's why
well, I mean, take a look at the British delegation. Remember the history of the Hashemites and at the hands of the British. The whole history is to how to damage them. And the biggest damage that was done to the Hashemites was at the hands of the British, and there they were, also in the funeral. So.
All right, we're going to cut for a break. We'll come right back. Don't forget, we're now on the World Wide Web. So in case you missed this show or you want to study Raghida in slow motion, you www.charneyreport.com, and you see us all over the world. If you have a sleepless night, I told you, if you're in Rome or Sardinia, you put on your computer, you've got us in your living room. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Leon Charney. We have a blue ribbon panel now. We're discussing the Middle East, King Hussein of Jordan, the new King Abdullah. We have with us the Honorable Shmuel Sisso, the Consul General of the State of Israel in New York. I always tell him I think he also has Puerto Rico. I don't know if he checks it out, but it's a good place to be in the winter. Shmuel Segev, 30 years a correspondent for the Ma'ariv, used to be a good newspaper before he left. Now we're not so sure. And he wrote a book, a terrific book called Crossing the Jordan by St. Martin's Press. I'm kibitzing about the Ma'ariv. They have a very fun, we don't want to talk about the Ma'ariv right now. And Raghida Dergham, who is senior correspondent for Hayat, you heard of that newspaper, big Arab newspaper in London, and she's also now a CNN commentator. She took care of, you do more than funerals, don't you?
Actually, I was doing MSNBC during the Gulf War, so I go back and forth.
You move around. And the Leon Charney Report. Shmuel, you're the formal person here. Israel's reaction. Have you ever seen anything like that to a foreign Arab leader?
I think King Hussein could be elected to any post in Israel if he wanted to. He was most popular, and I think is still the most popular figure outside of Israel. And it is obvious, after all, unlike some other countries that we have, even Arab countries that we have relationship with them, he showed a lot of warmth towards the peace, and that's, I think, what catch the Israeli people's heart.
Don't you think his speech at Rabin's funeral was a real turning point also? The emotional way that he spoke?
Yes. He was spoken, with a lot of dignity, his deep voice and his warmth, and his gestures, his humanitarian gestures, and as it was said here before, his attitude of people to people, from heart to heart. I think that was captured, and that's what the Israelis would like to see with all our Arab nations.
Shmuel, what's your analysis of this?
Well, I was not surprised, taking into account the long history of relations between Israel and Jordan, first behind the scene and then up into the open. As a matter of fact, the two monarchs with whom Israel had the longest relationship, King Hussein of Jordan, King Hassan of Morocco, it started about the same time. King Hassan 61, King Hussein 63. And
Yeah, but his grandfather with 48 with Golda Meir.
yes, but it was not so meaningful as it was with King Hussein. The grandfather, Abdallah, was an emirate, Transjordan. The relations started when, even before the State of Israel was established, and he had ongoing relationship with Israelis, Eliyahu Sasson, the late Eliyahu Sasson, Golda Meir. Although about Golda Meir, he was sensitive to meet a woman. And when she met with him on the eve of the Israeli war in 1948, he was not very happy. And when in the next meeting, Eliyahu Sasson, in the middle of the war of independence, came to see King Abdallah, and he told him, you know that I came alone because Ben Gurion appointed Golda Meir to be the ambassador, first ambassador to Moscow. He said, good, keep her there forever. So I was not surprised about the warmth and the relationship with King Hussein. It was an ongoing relations, and it would have been very strange if Israel did not show this kind of.
Well, they showed a lot of respect with the people. The vox populi, the real emotion of the people comes out.
Mhm.
That's really what's important. Raghida, what's going to happen to Queen Naor?
I suppose she would stay in Jordan because her children are there.
There's
I
a
would
big move
suppose
to appoint her son the regent.
he is already crown prince.
Yeah, I know.
And so he is, this is official, the crown prince of Jordan now is the son of Queen Noor, who is not the immediate younger brother of
Right.
King Abdullah. There is another son, or another brother, I should say, in between,
Right.
who is Prince Ali, and he is the son of the late Queen, Princess Alia, who died, one of the king's wives
In a
who
helicopter
died.
crash.
Right. So this was his third wife, and Ali is her son, and then of course there is Queen Noor, with whom the king stayed for 20 years, and her son Prince Hamza is now the crown prince.
All right, let me take this around the table. I don't know if you know, why did King Hussein knock out his brother, the crown prince Hassan? Anybody know?
Yeah, well, you know, we have heard many
He
different.
published in his letter to his brothers.
Yes.
No, but we want the story behind the story.
Well-
we want it like crossing the Jordan book, you know?
I'll give you my interpretation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My interpretation is that when he appointed his brother as the crown prince, Amir Abdullah, the now king, was 2 years old. The area in general was in turbulence. Everyone was plotting, trying to kill and assassinate the king. He was really concerned about the continuity of his country. And he understood that should he be killed, the young prince
Couldn't
would
handle it.
probably never be a king anymore, because who knows what will be the future of the kingdom. And therefore he wanted an adult to run the affairs of the king, and who was more closer to him than his brother. And he did a fantastic job. But at a certain moment, I think that the king himself was disturbed, that the line of succession was interrupted by shifting the royal rights to his brother, which means that his brother's son will become the future king
Right.
after King Hassan.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, because there's been several different interpretations, and some reasons that the king himself gave in his letter to his brother, in which he said something about interfering with the army, that is overstepping his line in terms of his behavior and his family's behavior during
Yeah,
the
I know-
absence
we know
of the
about
king.
that.
But my guess, my guess,
Yeah.
is that he wanted Prince Hassan, the brother of the late King Hussein, to commit to appointing as his crown prince Hamza, the son of Queen Noor.
And he wouldn't do it.
And what we understand is that Prince Hassan would not give such a commitment, and as King Hussein was facing mortality, he then decided to restore the constitutional
Good
pattern, and then go to say, well, I'm not going to take away from my sons. Had he appointed Hamza immediately, it would have been a problem for Hamza and for Queen Noor. It would have made trouble for Jordan. Whereas by going to his eldest son, traditionally in Jordan, that is welcomed, because this is the way they know
Shmuel
it.
says a Palestinian wife. Shmuel, Hassan was very close to the Israeli leadership. Arik Sharon was very friendly with Prince Hassan. Most of the Israeli leaders were. Is this going to affect Israel in any way, politically?
We hope not. We hope King Abdullah now was in Israel. He already declared, and
When was he in Israel?
before the King Hussein passed away, he was in Israel.
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know
In
that.
what capacity?
Or
When did
maybe
he
I'm
go?
wrong. No, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just met the defense minister, Yitzhak Mordechai. He
No,
participated.
you are not wrong. He visited Israel several times, and
Incognito?
he has had very good relationship with the Israeli army. With
The daughter, who's chief
No,
of
no,
the
but he
women's
was.
corps.
Yeah,
I
but
know.
he
I
was-
know. He also. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Also, the defense minister participated in maneuvers of Jordanian army in which he took place as a commander, and they had a lot of discussions together. Anyway, but we don't have to make any assumptions, because he already declared that he would like to go on with his father's legacy towards Israel too. And I read the letter of ambassador, the Jordanian ambassador here, and which he committed himself to the peace process. So I don't see any reason for changing this policy.
You know, I want to bring to your attention, all of you, that when the deal that was signed between Jordan and the White House, and I've said this on my show before, I went downtown. You've been in Amman? You've been in Amman? You've been in Amman?
Yep.
I went downtown in Amman and filmed, and I was overwhelmed by people who were unhappy about the fact that Israel and Jordan were getting together. The people, the Amcha, as you would say in Hebrew, your people, they were not happy, and they were really raucous and rambunctious. It was a little frightening at times. Will that element be able to overtake what's going on now with the Jordanian king since he's new on the throne? That's a very deep question.
It is a very good question and a very deep one, I agree. The popular sentiment in Jordan in general was opposed to the peace with Israel. And some people with whom I met in Amman and in the other places, in Irbil, Jarash, and places like this, the popular sentiment was that it was the king's peace with Israel, not the Jordanian people peace with Israel. That was one sentiment. I interpreted, maybe the Raghida has another interpretation. My interpretation is because the majority of the population in Jordan are Palestinians, they were concerned that the peace with Jordan would neglect the settlement or the agreement, the Oslo Accords with the Palestinians, and that once Israel settled with the Jordanians, the Palestinians would be pushed aside. And they wanted first that the Palestinians get their rights in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip before they can commit themselves to further improvement of relations with another Arab country. And I think that in the first segment, Raghida mentioned something which was very important about the visit of President Assad to Amman. I found the most significant, and also it strengthens my point, the most significant comment that came from Damascus after Assad's visit to Jordan to pay respects for the death of the king was that we were never against the peace with Israel. We were against the pace of normalizations with the Israelis, which is a very significant
You
statement.
wrote that in your book.
No, I
No,
did. I
that's-
don't have. It's very new.
It's new.
Really?
Yes.
They
that's-
never said it in public that they were not opposed to peace with Israel, but only to
You
denormalization.
know,
that,
wait a minute, Shmuel, I
and
wanna
that
get-
was
is
that was the
does-
sentiment of the Palestinians. That's why they were opposed.
I got you. Does the government feel that way about Syria? The Israeli government?
We would like to see normalization with Syria too, and then the negotiation to
No, but he says
come
something
much
very
forward.
important. He
But,
says something very important here. In other words, they're willing to declare a no state of war, but they're not willing to get it to normalization. Is that correct?
I'm
No,
not
but
sure.
wait a moment. Wait a second.
I'm not sure if it's. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, or if he state an actual fact. But the statement itself, it's important. Maybe it's signs of progress.
Well, you know, the Syrians' position is that they have opted for peace as a strategic choice. They have been saying that for a couple of years, and they're saying they committed to the strategic choice for peace. And they have said they are ready to resume negotiations from their point of view where they stopped. That is, during the time they were negotiating at Y, of course, with the Israelis in the presence of the Americans, and these negotiations were interrupted first by the death of the late Prime Minister Rabin, and then just because of the elections were starting, correct me if I'm wrong, and which Prime Minister Perez wanted to halt. Anyway, the Syrians, and I agree with you, they are coming on with new indications right now to say, look, let us go on, let us see how we go from here. Now, which brings me to the point of the Jordanians on the peace process. Even King Hussein was very critical of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he was open and clear about it, and in effect was saying, what are you doing? I built the peace and you are going to destroy it. I mean, it was a gamble for him to go to a peace treaty. But at the end, he was quite disappointed with Benjamin Netanyahu. And right now, the future of the relationships between Jordan and Israel depend very much on the choices of the government of Israel. I believe King Abdullah will commit to the peace treaty, and he will try to even make it a warmer peace. However, he needs the counterparts in Israel. If it is along the lines that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been following, well, then that peace is going to get frozen,
in case you didn't
and
know,
it's not going to
they're
work.
having an election in May. In case you know,
Right.
there's about 9 people running for prime minister. There are 4 in the studio who didn't run yet, but we could get 50,000.
So it depends on the
signatures.
choice of the Israeli people. Whom do they elect? Do they elect somebody who's going to carry through with the peace process, or someone who wants to throw it out of the
it's a
window?
big question.
Leon, because of
But
You
your
got to cut for a break. We're going to come right
Oh.
back. We got Shmuel Sisso here. He represents the government of Israel, so we can't ask him too many penetrating questions about political issues. But Shmuel Segev is ready to answer him, and so is Raghida. But we'll get the official line of the Israeli government from Shmuel. Don't leave us. www.CharneyReport.com. When you're in Iran, you can find us too. We're back. I'm Leon Charney, and I'm not gloating about President Clinton. I'm saying I'm very satisfied that the American Constitution, written by my forefathers, not Rabbi Yitzhak, but by Adams and Jefferson, survived this rough Republican rough ride, and I'm really thrilled about it. I keep saying it because for 1 year we talked about it, and I think it was imperative that President Clinton stay. And again, I don't talk about his personal conduct. I talk about the Constitution. We lose the Constitution, we lose everything. Shmuel Sisso is with us, the Consul General Ambassador in New York. Shmuel Segev is with us, author of Crossing the Jordan, Ma'ariv correspondent. 30 years I was kibbutzing. I was a member of the Mossad. I was close. It's military intelligence. Sometimes they cross borders. They change clothes. And Raghida Dergham, senior correspondent for Hayat, political, diplomatic, and now a commentator on CNN, especially for funerals. You wanted to say something, Shmuel, about Raghida?
Yes, I would like to say that progress in the peace process is not on one side. As my Argentinian wife always says, you need two to tango.
That's true.
And if we want to see peace process going forward, we also have to see compliance by the Palestinians, and it doesn't matter who will be the prime minister. And if you look at maybe even the history of this government giving up Hebron and even going on with the Y Accord and giving land according to Y Accord by a Likud prime minister, so this is a very much insignificance to say that all the segments in the Israeli politics would like to see progress in the peace process.
Yes, yes,
Well,
it
let
does
me say
matter,
one
though.
thing,
Yes,
one
it does
thing.
matter
Raghida, one
if
minute.
there is commitment.
Shmuel, in your book, you bring out that Rabin was very, very nervous also about whether Arafat was complying with what he promised. Do you remember that?
in general, even after he signed the Oslo Accords,
He was nervous.
he was suspicious. he knows that Arafat, I don't want how to put it, he was not the partner of the truth in all his relationship with any leader of the
He was an
Middle East.
elusive character.
And he was concerned that Arafat would not be able to deliver.
Right.
And therefore, he wanted to put more and more assurances that whatever he signed,
Confidence building measures.
confidence building measures, and whatever he signed, he would deliver. I think that in part, what we have seen after the assassination of Rabin, in retrospect, probably supported Rabin's concern. Because as the Consul General said, not everything that Arafat signed, he complied. I'm not exonerating Benjamin Netanyahu.
You brought out a very important point in your book, and believe me, I'm not trying to do anything except tell the truth about your book. One of the great mistakes, I don't think Oslo was a great agreement the way it was set up. I believe in the peace and the peace treaty, and I believe you have to make peace with the PLO. And my idea, and we discussed it, that the same day that the Israelis said, we recognize you, they should have knocked out their covenants. I didn't have to go to Gaza to hear, and I was in Gaza, by the way, for the Palestinian Convention with President Clinton, to see them reaffirm that they knocked out that covenant. You and I agree. They sent non-professional guys to negotiate. Uri Savia, who may have been a terrific consul general and great on the basketball circuit with Stern and all, didn't know the Arabs, didn't know the mentality of the Arabs, and he became all of a sudden the chief negotiator for this. And you write about that in your book.
I'm glad that you mentioned it, because I think that one of the problems of the Oslo Accords, I'm not speaking now about the Palestinian side, I'm speaking about the Israeli
Right.
side, was the non-professionalism of the team that negotiated the
It's
accords.
true.
And
They didn't bring
It's
in
funny,
the
the
army.
Palestinians say that about the
about
Palestinians.
their own.
Yeah,
And it's
I
true.
say-
that's
I'm
why they
not-
say the
I'm not-
Palestinians say
I'm not
also
saying
on
it
their
about
side.
it, because this what explains also why Rabin jumped only in the very last moment on the bandwagon, because he didn't believe it, he didn't trust it, he didn't want the team that negotiated, and eventually when he had no choice, that was
accepted
the only thing available.
And you know what I
he
told
accepted.
you when we had our little fish dinner? I said to you it was a political problem because Shimon Peres had taken over the party internally. Nissim Zvili was elected Secretary General of the party, and Asa Weitzman, who Rabin, I can tell you personally,
Opposed him.
did not want to see him as
Right.
president. He saw he was losing and galloping away from, so really at one point, and your book really shows that. And it's a fascinating book.
And Peres made
And
the
Peres
election
moved ahead.
possible of Asa
Right.
Weitzman, yes.
Right.
So that all these considerations guided Rabin's reluctance and carefulness.
Okay, but we're all stuck with it. We got it. It's been signed by
that's-
the United
yeah.
States.
That's a historic fact.
Are we going forward, Shmuel? 1 minute, Raghida. Are we going forward in the
course.
peace?
I think the peace is irreversible, the peace process, and
Do you meet with the Palestinians here in New York all the
would-
time?
No, yes, I meet, and we'll go forward.
You do a
Till
tango?
now-
You do a
till
tango?
now
You do a
there's-
tango? Takes two to tango.
Till now, committees are still meeting, people are still meeting, not as much as we want, but there's progress slow, maybe too slowly, maybe too slow, sometimes fast, or sometimes slow, but this is an irreversible
All right.
process.
Raghida,
No, it is not irreversible.
irreversible.
It
he
is not.
says.
Yes, it is not an irreversible process. It is something one must be very careful about. This is a process that can be reversed, and
How?
it because of the people, if they don't commit to the peace process as an ideology, if you will, and if they don't respect their signatures in terms of, let's say, no settlements, no new settlements, no whatever it is, or the Palestinians.
All right, you know
Because
why
it's
you're
a
wrong?
short
I'll tell
time.
you why you're wrong.
Look,
You
there
ever
has
hear
to
of-
be
you
a
ever hear-
commitment.
You ever hear of a word called money? You heard of economics.
Yes, sometimes.
The world will not accept any reversibility of this
Well,
agreement.
you see,
The
but
world- the world
but
depends
there
on
are
that.
elements who do not accept that peace process.
I agree.
And if you are not
In
careful,
Israel and Palestine.
exactly, and if you don't
Right.
guard it, then it is reversible. That is my point. It is a matter of policy, and it's a matter of making it a success. Otherwise, if it gets out of hand, then it is definitely reversible.
I agree that there are elements in both camps who are opposed to
Right.
the peace,
But it's
I do
irreversible. I
agree
agree
that
with
it is irreversible. I only say that people who expect an easy and fast process will be wrong and will be mistaken. In the Middle East, it will go slow. It is in slow motion. One has to be very careful, and there are explosive issues to be solved.
Yes.
Jerusalem, refugees, final borders,
Right of return.
Yes.
right of return, all these things. So don't expect miracles. It will be very slow, but once you are on the right track and continue and you are consistent in your pursuit of peace, you will achieve the peace eventually.
You need to beef it up. We've lost too much time in the last couple of years. There's been an erosion in the confidence in that peace process. That endangers the peace process. You must make sure
Yeah,
to
but
guard it.
there are certain,
And to guard it is
Raghida,
to implement
there are circumstances
agreements.
where it has been proven that Yasser Arafat had control of certain terrorist activities and he didn't control it.
Well, even
and
that-
that's unacceptable in Israel.
He's
and that
being
gives Bibi
helped.
Netanyahu
Yeah.
the slogan of
You
bringing
know,
security.
what have we had recently in the last couple of years in terms of terrorist attacks? It's very minor.
Minor?
It's
Oh,
expected
they-
compared
they-
to the.
Hundreds
killed-
are
no,
killed.
they killed
in
Peres.
Please let
streets
me.
are
No, wait.
minors.
No.
They killed Peres.
No, Paris. What do you mean?
His
When they
election.
killed Shimon Peres,
No.
they killed
I'm
his
talking
election.
since the prime
Oh,
minister, since Netanyahu had become prime
Raghida,
minister.
You
The
you strengthened Leon's
Listen,
point
what
of
I'm
view
trying to
because if Yasser Arafat did at the time what he is doing now, probably we would have a different government in Israel today.
let me
Might
restate
have a
this
different
because that's
consul general
important.
there, which I feel
Yeah.
badly about.
Let me restate that, Leon. It's very important to do
Okay.
it. What I'm saying is that there's been such opposition and such frustration that we didn't have any major number of terroristic attacks that would have made everything disappear. So there was a certain amount of control. The CIA is helping the Palestinians in terms of the security arrangements, and the Israelis. You do admit that there has been a recognition of how much the Palestinian Authority had controlled that these elements that are under its authority. So it isn't perfect. They couldn't make it perfect. Even Israel cannot make it perfect within Israel in controlling and putting away possibilities, you see?
But it's
I
not
agree with what you said
irreversible.
now.
The point is, it's not irreversible.
not
I was in Gaza. I went to Gaza. I've been there later than you've been in Gaza. I've been there 4 weeks ago. I'm going to play a show, a 1-hour show about me in Gaza. And I could tell you that the people are not that dispirited over there. They feel that I felt I was at the Declaration of Ben Gurion when I was in that hole. I even voted. I didn't know I had the wrong vote. But they felt excitement. They felt they're going on their way. Clinton landed
And I
at
thought
their
Clinton
airport.
was brilliant there.
He landed
He really
at the
was.
airport. They're going to have a place to dock boats. I mean, it's moving. I think Shmuel's right. I think it is irreversible. The United States will not let it collapse. No one else in this world will let it collapse. And there are going to be humps and bumps. And Israelis, there are many Israelis who are stone against this agreement. They don't want it. And it's
Yeah.
election. What I agree, do you agree, Shmuel, that things will not get really going until the election takes place?
I don't think there is any connection to the election,
Really?
between the election and the peace process. I think if she says that sides has to carry out their obligations, I guess I differ with her. She thinks that the
Both
Israelis are not
sides,
carrying out,
yes.
but
Yes, the
but
Israelis are not.
we can see, and you talked about terrorist attacks, but it's not only terrorist attacks. Y agreement, what they did in Y agreement, they recycled old Palestinian obligations according to Oslo Accord. They tried to put some of the intangible promises into tangible promises with scheduled, with itemized, only a small example about even the reduce of the Palestinian police. It's something that you cannot argue about this. You have from 30,000 police that are permitted to, according to Oslo Code. They have 40,000 policemen, and they do not deny it. They say, yes, it should try to bypass it and so on. I don't want to get into it. We were talking on the process. What I was saying is that, and I also don't agree with you that many Israelis don't want peace. It's not true. The Israelis want peace. Maybe they think we have to take care, or the government should take care more of our security, more better thing to achieve. It's not the same. It's not the same as we are talking about the Hamas.
All right, we got to cut for a break. I disagree on two issues. Number one is I know you're a diplomat and you can't talk about it, but I don't believe much will happen until the election occurs. I think Shmuel will agree with me. And two, there are elements who would prefer to have land rather than peace in Israel. You've got to recognize it. I mean, it's part of the mosaic of Israel, unfortunately, that's the way it is. I mean, and they're going to have an election on us.
But what is the implication of it? Those people who are thinking that maybe, if they are thinking, they are not going to explode buses in Hebron.
No, they're not.
That's the big difference. They are trying to be elected according to
Shmuel,
democratic way.
I admire you, but remember Yigal Amir. Rabin was killed by a Jew, not by an Arab. We'll be right back. We're in a very heated and passionate discussion about the Middle East with the Blue Ribbon panel. We have Ambassador Shmuel Sisso representing the government of Israel. We have Shmuel Segev representing Zaymon's Press because he wrote a book for them and it's called Crossing the Jordan. And we have Raghida Dergham, who is with Hayat, which is a very prominent, maybe the most prominent Arab newspaper in the world. They're in London, but she gets paid in dollars, so she doesn't worry about the valuation. Shmuel, elections in Israel, and we can't bring Shmuel Sisso into this because he's a diplomat and he should stay out of it. Give me your guess. What's going to happen there?
I agree, first of all, to your assumption that the elections in Israel are very important as far as the peace process are concerned. Because although the Consul General said that all Israelis, or the overwhelming majority, want peace, it's true, but at the same time there is a difference between people who are enthusiastic to achieve peace and people who are ready to accept it as inevitable. The situation is such that we have now parties in Israel that they want peace and they want to be active for achieving it.
What's the parties?
Labor, the centrist party, Meretz.
You're talking about the new Shachak Mordechai party, Meridor?
Yeah, well, we don't know its strengths yet,
Right.
but David Levy, Gesher, the party that represents Moroccan Jews in Israel. Shas, although they are part of the coalition, but as far as the peace process is concerned, they are for the peace process. So there is really an overwhelming majority. And it's better to have the elections and let the people speak and be represented in the government that will express its wishes and its dreams and achieve the peace that they want, rather than to accept it as it is inevitable. Now, this is it. Now you are asking me about to predict what are the elections in Israel. Although we come from the land of the prophets, I am not prepared to be a prophet at this time because it is a kind of a jungle. Believe me, I'm a sixth generation Israeli. I went through all the elections since the first one in 1949 up to now. I never saw such a diversity and the number of candidates that are running for prime minister as I saw today.
All right.
The ideology doesn't count anymore, it's the personality.
It's calling a ritzing out. Shmuel wrote a great piece in his book about King Hussein of Morocco. I know that you were born in Morocco. Briefly tell me, and then I'll ask Raghida, how influential is King Hassan in the Middle East peace process?
He was very much influential until recent years, and he tried to promote the peace process as he could. And I think first meetings, the real meetings for the peace process, as you wrote, I think in your book, were in King Hassan's hospices. And now, after there's some years that he is not much involved from his own reasons. I think he was very significant also to Moroccan Jews and to relations
He treats the
of people.
Jews pretty well over there, doesn't he?
Yes, yes, it's a tradition of his family, and we still can come and go to Morocco. I've been to Morocco a couple of times, and we felt at home, and they let us feel at home in Morocco.
Raghida, what do you know about the king?
With the last couple of years that you are referring to, the king did make clear that he was angry with the government in Israel, headed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He refused to receive him.
That's true.
He said,
I
he said it.
I met
He
his
said, "Look, I'm not
Andre
going
Azoulay,
to-"
who's his chief Jewish
Yes,
A
yes.
great
counselor,
man.
good man,
Good man.
who came to the Perez Peace Center, and we spoke at length, and he told me that, I said, what is King Hassan doing now? He says, well, he's a bit peeved at what's going on in the government. So the elections are
Very important.
very coming.
Yes,
you can
they
help
are very
because you have a
important.
Moroccan background, and if you left here, you could run for what do you call it?
Gesher.
Is Colette Avital running for?
She is. But
She's running for what?
She's
Knesset.
running on the Labour ticket for the
And
Knesset.
Savira's running also.
Yeah, he's running with Shachak
I
and the
know.
centrist party.
So you
Yeah,
have
just- I really hope that the Israeli elections, the Israeli people make the right decision in terms of bringing somebody who is a strong supporter, who would take chances to make that peace
the
process
funny thing, I
happen.
have the same feeling about the PLO.
Yeah, the elections. Well, you know what will happen
I hope
after
they get a little
Arafat?
democracy over
That's
there.
oh yes, that's it. That
hope
is so
they get some.
essential that the Palestinians must be pushed to establish democracy in institutions, not in the person of
All
Arafat
right,
or
if each of you
otherwise.
can talk in about 15 seconds, tell me the legacy of King Hussein, but 15 seconds, because we got to cut out. We're on the World Wide Web, we can't overplay.
What?
Raghida, the legacy of King Hussein.
The visionary man who dared take chances and put Jordan ready to go on after him.
Shmuel,
His legacy is he stabilized the Middle East to the extent that none of the neighbors of Jordan, whether it is Israel or the Arab countries, want to destabilize the new king and to upset the status quo.
When he went to peace, he went all the way. He wanted a real peace, not only between the leaders, but within the people. And this is the most important thing that we should try to achieve in the Middle East, peace with people to people.
I think his legacy was he had more democracy in his parliament than we had in Washington. Boy, I'm harping on this tonight, but we won at the end. I think what he did is he tried to start a traditional democracy in the Middle East, which is very, very difficult to do, and you know that in any Arab country. We hope you enjoyed this show, and we'll see you next week. Thank our guests, Ambassador Sisso, Shmuel Segev, and Raghida Dergham. Trouble is, Raghida looks better than all of us.